People have always thought about ways of reforming the monetary system for years. However, until recently, success had proven elusive. At the beginning of the 20th century, engineers and programmers finally did it. In this video, I'll explain in the simplest way possible what cryptocurrencies Bitcoin and blockchain are, and whether or not you should invest in cryptocurrencies. When the engineers and programmers were reforming the monetary system, they had to consider three things. 1. The emission of money must be uniform and predictable. 2. Everything must be done within a decentralized platform open to all, so that there's no need to involve the banks. 3. The security of keeping the money for the participants must be provided, so that no one can steal it. Now that you know that, let's try to understand how cryptocurrencies work. A cryptocurrency is a digital currency that can be used to buy goods and services, but uses an online ledger with strong cryptography to secure online transactions. Oh, right. Let's make it simpler. John and Sarah are playing in the park with their friends. John wants to give $10 to Sarah when Sarah takes the money. That's considered a physical transaction. They didn't need a friend or a witness to prove that your transaction happened. They both knew the transaction occurred. This transaction is recorded in a trustable ledger for John and Sarah. The ledger is a large collection of data in which transactions and billions of dollars are recorded. What if John wants to give $10 to Sarah virtually as he did in the park? It's possible. Let's say there's a virtual controller between John and Sarah, which controls the transaction. Oh, but what if John or Sarah tries to cheat, or something goes wrong with the controller? Is there any other solution? Well, yes, let's consider that both John and Sarah have this ledger. What if their friends also have the same ledger? So if the transaction is virtual, everyone has this ledger on their computer, they all keep track of the transaction. John or Sarah wouldn't be able to cheat the ledger since it wouldn't agree with everyone else in the system. This ledger will be very difficult to destroy, especially if many friends of John and Sarah are using it. This ledger system has a defined set of rules from the beginning. Everyone transacting within the ledger can know how money is transacted. If everyone within the ledger agrees to the set of rules, then everyone has trust in all transactions. So there's not one person that has full control over this. John and Sarah have ID numbers in this ledger, much like a nickname. No one in the ledger knows what ID number belongs to John or Sarah unless they give that information to whoever they're transacting with. This provides a layer of anonymity for John and Sarah. This is called Bitcoin protocol. Instead of money, this system uses cryptocurrencies, which are Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ripple and many others. Most cryptocurrencies do not belong to anyone, and no one controls them. This means they are independent of local and international central banks. No one has complete control over the system. Everyone knows the rules and transactions are completely transparent. The total value of all cryptocurrencies on April 13, 2021 was more than $2.2 trillion. According to CoinMarketCap, and the total value of all bitcoins, the most popular digital currency was pegged at about $1.2 trillion. Let's talk about Bitcoin. You definitely heard the story about Laszlo Hanyecz, who bought 2 pizzas with 10,000 bitcoins in 2010. In 2010, the value of a single bitcoin was only 0.0008. Nowadays with 10,000 bitcoins, Laszlo could buy 1 pizza for every person who lives in Italy. Bitcoin is the first cryptocurrency ever created. All that changed when Satoshi Nakamoto in 2008 published a document online. This document is called the White Paper. It suggested a way of creating a system for a decentralized currency called Bitcoin. Satoshi Nakamoto created the system in such a way that there will never be more than 21 million bitcoins. Let's compare Bitcoin to the normal bank. The bank's ledger is not transparent, and it's stored on the bank's main computer. You can sneak a peek into the bank's ledger, and only the bank has complete control over it. Bitcoin, on the other hand, is a transparent ledger. At any point in time, I can see all of the transactions and balances that are taking place. This system claimed to create digital money that solves the double spend problem without the need for a central authority. At its core, Bitcoin is the transparent ledger without a central authority. Here are some advantages Bitcoin has over the current system. 1. You have complete control over your money. Nobody can access your funds. Nobody can confiscate your holdings. Also, there's no bank or government to freeze your account to. In many cases, Bitcoin is cheaper to use than traditional wire transfers. Your money orders today in 2021, you can book a hotel or order a flight with Bitcoin if you want. Also, there are even Bitcoin debit cards that allow you to pay at any store with your Bitcoin balance. How does Bitcoin work? Bitcoin works via the blockchain. But what is the blockchain? The blockchain is the biggest innovation after the internet and will affect everyone's life in a few decades. It's a new way to store valuable data and transactions. The blockchain eliminates the need for an intermediary like a bank, allowing people to transact directly with each other. Blockchain technology can be used to transfer anything of value, not just financial transactions. It's possible to carry out transactions without the need to refer to a third party recognized by all as reliable. Transactions can be settled between peers by the majority of network participants. It's based on four fundamental concepts: decentralization, transparency, safety, immutability. How does it work? The blockchain is a database structured in blocks. Each block contains data, the first hash of the block, the second hash of the previous block. The data that's stored inside a block depends on the type of blockchain. The Bitcoin blockchain, for example, stores the details about a transaction, such as the sender, receiver, and amount of coins. A block also has the hash. You can compare a hash to your DNA. It identifies the block and all of its contents. And it's always unique, just as your DNA. Once a block is created, its hash has been calculated. Changing something inside the block will cause the hash to change. So in other words, hashes are very useful when you want to detect changes to blocks. If the DNA of a block changes, it no longer is the same block. The third element inside each block is the hash of the previous block. This effectively creates a chain of blocks. And it's this technique that makes the blockchain so secure. If the second hash of the block is bound to the hash of the previous block, once the second hash of the first block. Now the first block is a bit special. It cannot point to previous blocks because it's the first one. We call this the genesis block. Now let's say that you tamper with the second block. This causes the hash of the block to change as well. In turn, that will make the next block and all following blocks invalid because they no longer store a valid hash of the previous block. So changing a single block will make all following blocks invalid. But using hashes is not enough to prevent tampering. Computers these days are very fast and can calculate hundreds of thousands of hashes per second. So to alleviate this, blockchains have something called proof of work. It's a mechanism that slows down the creation of new blocks. In Bitcoin's case, it takes about 10 minutes to create a new block. For a transaction to be processed and considered valid, it must be grouped with other transactions to form a block. Each block is added on top of the previous block. Each block refers to the previous block number, thus creating a link between all the blocks making up the chain. The first block in the chain is called the genesis block. Each block of transaction is validated by the network itself and constitutes an archive of all transactions, of all the history of each transaction. Anyone who's part of the network, information about the transactions that take place within the network itself, completely decentralized. All information is present on all the nodes that make up the network and therefore cannot be changed. Once a block of transactions is added to the blockchain, it's difficult to go back. The more blocks are added to the top, the more difficult it will be to reverse the operation until it's completely impossible. If you want to make a change, you'd have to change all the previous and next blocks. By distributed consent, we mean the fact that most computers must agree on the validity of a transaction before it's accepted in the blockchain. Mining is the process of validating transactions and adding new blocks to the blockchain. For a new transaction block to be added, it must be checked, validated, and encrypted. To carry out this step, it's necessary to solve a complex mathematical problem that requires a high expenditure of power and processing capacity. The solution to this puzzle is called proof of work. It's difficult to solve, but easy to prove, and it provides proof that computing power was used to help build a network. Small cryptocurrency rewards are awarded for each new block. Added advantages of the blockchain: transparency. Transactions are visible to all participants. Compared to existing archiving and recording systems, the blockchain offers significant improvements in terms of transparency. Removal of intermediaries allows the removal of intermediaries involved in the archiving and transfer of goods necessary in conventional transactions. Decentralization. It can work on a decentralized computer network, reducing the risk of hacking, server downtime, and consequent data loss. Confidence increases trust between parties involved in the transaction through greater transparency and decentralization of networks. Safety. The data entered in a blockchain are immutable. The data